Let me introduce our speaker for tonight. Mr. Ray Roberts is the past, he's retired now, past archaeologist for the South Carolina Department of Transportation. Mr. Roberts knows his stuff. He will be talking to us tonight about the Tellico, I think I'm pronouncing that the right way, Tellico Excavation. Also Cherokees in the 18th century. So without further ado, an evening with Mr. Wayne Roberts.
All right, it's going to be bright in here. Everybody see? That's really hard for me to see. But we're talking about South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and North Georgia. Talking about the homeland of the Cherokee. The Cherokee can be divided into three groups. The lower Cherokee lived in upper South Carolina, adjacent North Georgia. The middle Cherokee lived in western North Carolina and a little bit in North Georgia. The overhill Cherokee lived in East Tennessee. Now, it confuses people sometimes with the Cherokee that the middle Cherokee are further divided into the middle, the valley, and the out towns. All depends on which river drainage you're located on, the Hiwassee, the upper Little Tennessee, or over on the Tuckasegee, Oklahoma. Differences in the Cherokee are found in the dialects. The lower and the middle Cherokee had an R sound. The overhill Cherokee had an L sound. So when you say the word Cherokee in Cherokee, if you are from lower or middle towns, you would say Saragee. If you were from the overhill, you would say Salagee. They use the L where the others use the R. Well, what I want to tell you about is my involvement in 8 years of the Tellico Archaeological Site, and it is located in East Tennessee, about 40 miles south of Knoxville. I've spent 8 years of my life on this project, and the project lasted about 16 years, so I was just there for half of it. When I got there, it was well underway. This is Tellico Dam. This is the dam, the sluice gates, and this dike here. This is the Tennessee River. This is the city of Lenoir City, and this is the Little Tennessee River. Tellico Dam blocks the lower Little Tennessee River. Tellico River is a tributary of the Little Tennessee River. Now, back in the Depression, the Tennessee Valley Authority was founded to provide electricity for one of the poorest regions of our nation, and that was Appalachia. And they hired a young engineer straight out of college named Red Wagner, and they gave him the assignment of designing this dam. Well, it didn't provide any hydroelectric power. To this day, it does not provide 1 watt of hydroelectric power. Tellico Lake was provided strictly as a recreational lake, because if you've been to East Tennessee, you know there just aren't enough reservoirs in East Tennessee. So this is one of the few TVA dams that doesn't provide hydroelectric power. That's why it was shelved in the 30s. But one day, young Red Wagner grew up to be the head of TVA. And in the 60s, when he became the head, he decided that, by gosh, we're going to build my design of that dam. It wasn't needed. It didn't provide anything for anybody except a lot of houses that most of us in this room can't afford. Purely recreation. Your federal tax dollars at work. This was fought in the legal system for a number of years. The Environmental Protection Agency was involved. This is the famous snail darter case. It was defeated time and time again. Congress wouldn't provide any monies for the dam. And finally, in one of our budget crises, the local congressman in Tennessee tacked on an amendment that if they passed the Budget Act, this dam would be completed. So that is how it was done. Here's the Tennessee River, the Little Tennessee River, the Tellico River, and as you can see in the inset map, we're talking about right here, about 40 miles south of Knoxville. And this is the way it looks on a topographic map. This is US 411. This is right in the middle of the project. The dam is out of sight to the north. This is the Ridge and Valley province. You have these series of ridges and valleys. And you have limestone that erodes under water and creates the valleys, and the sandstone makes the ridges. So it's purely an erosional feature, the ridge and valley, and which is located between the Great Smoky Mountains to the east and the Cumberland Mountains to the west. This is what it looked like before the reservoir was completed. This is the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This is the river. This is the Tellico Blockhouse. And this is what it looked like standing at the same spot after the reservoir was completed. This is me in 1975. As you can see, I do know how to use a shovel. Where I'm standing right there is approximately 9,000 years old. That was the ground surface. You can see a hearth right here. This was a prepared clay hearth. I'm standing on a terrace of the river bottom. This is a T1 terrace. The red clay is available on an upper terrace called T2 and T3. They would bring the red clay down here, and they made these clay hearths, and they brought chunks of clay in apparently a net bag, and then they impressed the netting into the clay. When the hearth was fired, we have a permanent record of that woven net in the hearth. This is the oldest evidence of textiles in the eastern U.S., and it dates about 10,000 years ago. This is a typical excavation of an archaic period. This is the ground surface. This is several feet. You can see Jamie here is not anywhere near the ground surface. Ground surface back here, there's a transit table. There's water screening over here. This is under excavation. This is a Mara Mountain level. This dates about 6,000 BC. Everything we did carefully excavated. When we had the time, we left all the artifacts in place, troweled, and the artifacts are mapped in. That's a sheet of graph paper. Everything is mapped into its exact location. Here we are excavating, and you see here, he is carefully drawing this feature. A feature in archaeology is a specific activity area. It can be, in this case, a pit was excavated in the ground. It might be a post hole. It might be a pile of rocks. It's some small locus of human activity which made some sort of change on the surface or below the surface of the ground. And we call these features, and we map them all in. Everything is water screened. We had 3.5 horsepower pumps, and the pump, that's the line that leads to the pump over here near the edge of the river. And we had these fire hoses. You dump a wheelbarrow load of dirt into these box screens, and you take a fire hose and you wash the dirt through, and the artifacts are left behind. This was pretty much universal all over the Tellico project. Everything was water screened. Prior to this, in my archaeological career, I hadn't water screened. This is a lot easier. My first experience was down at Edisto Island, and we did what's called roller skating. You bend nails over and you take the old steel skates off of old-fashioned roller skates and put them on the box screen, and you roll them back and forth so they go bump, 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 and then you pull it back, bump, 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 bump. And you do that for hours, and you would just zone out. I remember one time waking up and somebody was shaking. We're through, stop the screen. I had no idea. I was in the zone. We went deep. I worked initially on the early archaic excavations. We went back about 10,000 years. We went all the way back to just after the Ice Age ended. Right where Dr. Chapman is standing here is a layer of stinking, rotting plant debris. Leaves and twigs and sticks, and it's wet, and it doesn't stink as long as that dirt is covering it up. But the minute the air gets to it, it smells horrible. It smells like rotten eggs, natural gas. It's just horrible. But we couldn't get any lower. There was nothing below that. So we did not find the Paleo-Indian period down here where the people were hunting mammoths and mastodons, because at that time they're living on the second terrace. The first or lowest terrace hasn't yet been created. All the water that was tied up in glaciers at the end of the Ice Age, all that water was released into the atmosphere, and we had hundreds of years of extreme weather. And all that water put all this extra water down the rivers, and they excavated down with the river. It wore deeper into the valley. And I see a lot of similarities to what's going on right now with climate change and with the sea level widening, because our polar ice and our alpine glaciers are melting, and it's raising the ocean. And it is also freeing more moisture into the atmosphere. So you have more storm events. I live in Lexington. 2 years ago this fall, we got 20 inches of rain in the space of 3-4 days. You can expect your future to have a lot of that, because all this moisture is being freed into the atmosphere. You're going to have this. An archaeologist I know, and probably the most brilliant person I know, he knows the past environment, the climate better than anybody I know. You can throw out a year and he can tell you exactly what was going on with the climate. It was a pleasure to work with him. And he was telling me years ago, this is coming. This is like 20 years ago, he was telling me, this is happening. We have this these melting glaciers. Water's going to the atmosphere, things are going to get dicey. And it's already come to pass. Todd, you got a couple more chairs. You got some people wandering the hall there. All right, we recovered all kinds of materials in addition to artifacts. We've got some corn cob fragments here. We have various nutshell and seeds here. This is some carbonized wood, and these are animal bones here. We had experts in our field looking at everything we did, and we did flotation. Flotation is when you take a soil sample, and back in the early to mid 70s, this was a hot new thing. It had only been started in the 60s, really. So you take a soil sample from where you're excavating, and you dump that into a big tub, and the tub has a sieve in the bottom that lets the water in from below. You shake it back and forth, and the plant material rises up in suspension. Some of it floats on top, some is floated in suspension between the top of the water and the bottom. And you take a little skimmer and skim all that up, and you take that sample, and it looks like that. There's a penny right there, so you have an idea of what size we're talking about. Before archaeologists were doing this, all kinds of seeds were lost, and nobody knew what was going on. We got some of the earliest dates for domesticated plants, and believe it or not, in eastern North America, the earliest domesticated plants are not what you think of as domesticated plants. We call them weeds today. Things like Chenopodium. But they were eating these seeds. They were actually growing them, nurturing them, and the seeds got bigger, the domesticated seeds. Same thing happened to corn. We also took pollen cores from adjacent bogs and ponds. This is a natural pond. Don't you think that's a fine-looking raft floating there? Another fellow and I built that in my backyard. The reason I was selected to help build the raft was, number one, I knew how to use hammer, nails, and saws, and number two, I had a backyard. Most graduate students lived in apartments. I actually rented a house at the time, so I had a backyard in which to build this. So that's our raft we built. It floats on these two rubber rafts. And this is a pollen grain. That is looking through a microscope. That is caria, that is hickory. That's hickory pollen you're looking at. But we found all the way back 10,000 years, all of the different plants that grew there. And back 10,000 years ago, it was a much more temperate area than it is at current. Now, we did find some Paleo-Indian stuff tomorrow. Here are two Clovis points. These were found at Chota, the Cherokee capital of Chota, the Overhill capital. This is a flute from a Clovis point. And here's an end scraper and another blade tool right there. But see, Chota is on the second terrace. So it's not surprising we get Paleo-Indian stuff more than 10,000 years ago on the second terrace. The first terrace was a form when those people were living on the second terrace. The Archaic period, this is what I spent a lot of time working on. I know it's hard to see with all this light, but this is the Icehouse bottom side. And there is literally a layered cake of prehistory there. Dark bands of soil that accumulated dark because humans were living there. And you have middens developing from all the refuse that people left behind. Food remains, human waste, all kinds of things. When you butcher an animal, the animal blood and fat gets into the soil, and so it's all dark. And this is, I'll show you a little closer up. This is late Archaic over to the right. This is a close-up. You can't see it all. Here's your Morrow Mountain, your Stanley, your LaCroix, on down to your Kirk. And we had upper Kirk and lower Kirk. The Palmers we found are in the upper Kirk. The lower Kirk stuff is earlier than the Palmers. They are a good foot below that. And here are some Kirk projectile points. And here are some end scrapers and other tools, blade cores, all from the early Archaic period. This dates about 9,500 BC. Now here's what I was talking about, these layers you see, a dark layer, a dark layer. This is the profile at the Bacon farm site. We went back about 8,000 BC there. Those zones you see there are Kanawha and Lefroy. Below that is Kirk. These are some features in profile. You can see a shallow basin here. Shallow basins are little shallow basin-shaped pits dug in the ground and filled with charcoal. We're not sure about the function. Maybe they're just sweeping the hearth clean and putting the ashes in a pit. On the other hand, they could have put hot coals over there and done some low-level baking. And you can't see it here, but right there it's red. That's one of those red clay hearths. And they are baked out brick hard. Here's a hearth, here's a hearth, and right there is a metate, a grindstone, where they were grinding nuts, berries, and stuff. You see people doing that still today in Mexico with corn, but this predates the domestication of corn by thousands of years. And you can't see it, but that's a Kirk projectile point right there. We did archaeomagnetic dating. Every time you burn soil, the iron particles in the soil align with magnetic north. So what John is doing here is he has cut back a chunk of the hearth. There's just a little cube of the hearth there. And he's chipping it out with one of our favorite tools. And that's a grapefruit knife. Only it doesn't have serrations. We file them sharp. Nice straight sharp edge. And he's going to put these brass forms around it, and he's going to fill it with plaster of Paris. And then he's going to take his Brunton compass here, and he's going to get the reading of one side of that brass cube with present magnetic north. And we would send these samples to the University of Oklahoma, where they had a way to examine the sample with the clay hearth and figure out the alignment of magnetic north at that time. Magnetic north changes. True north doesn't, but magnetic north is always changing. And they would figure out exactly when that dated. And this is a much more precise way of dating than to use radiocarbon dating from charcoal. In fact, when we did radiocarbon dating, we would do radiocarbon dating and bracket stuff. And then all the small increments in between, we did archaeomagnetic dating. But we tried to take all of our radiocarbon dates from nutshell, hickory nutshell, because a tree can be 400 years old. So if you're going to take a radiocarbon sample from there, you've got 400-year leeway already from the tree's life. But that nutshell is created annually. And if you get it from a cluster, you assume that that's one season's harvest there, one meal. So that nutshell should be from that one season. So we tried with our radiocarbon dates to do it that way. And we were pretty successful. Another feature, it doesn't have to be excavated in the ground. This is what we call a rock cluster, fire-cracked rock cluster. All of those rocks are broken. See that small chip there? See how ragged some of these breaks are? These people did not have pottery. They did not have stone bowls. And yet they fix stew all the time. How do you fix stew if you don't have a pot? You get a skin bag. You fill the skin bag full of water, add meat, and you add vegetables. And then you get these rocks heated up in a fire, and using tongs, you lift the rocks and drop them in the bag. And the hot rocks cook the stew. I think prehistoric people are so much smarter than modern people give them credit for. You put this group of people out in the woods, I bet y'all wouldn't have thought of that. Y'all would have probably starved to death. This is a shallow basin. Half of it has been excavated. You can see the profile. The dark stain is only on the perimeter. So, and that is a LaCroix projectile point. Here are middle archaic points. We've got, well, all of these are Stanleys. We've got atlatl weights here, 2 broken ones, and we have net sinkers. These are about 3 inches long, about 1.5 inches across, and they've been notched. This is the first evidence that we believe of using nets for fishing in the southeast. Now, we didn't find any evidence of nets, and people said, well, you know, they could have been used as bolas, and you just throw them and the fly, you know, trips up and catches an animal. But in a dry cave in Kentucky, they actually found some of these with netting still attached to it. So we are interpreting these as net sinkers. And in the late archaic people, you get these nice big axes, and you get much larger net sinkers. And we know from the shell mound archaic sites in Kentucky and Tennessee that these people are in fact eating a lot of fish and shellfish. So we think the net sinker analogy holds. That brings us to the late archaic. These are Savannah River points. These are Eden's undifferentiated stem. It's the same as Swannanoa stem in this area. And these are sometimes made of quartz. That's quartzite, that's quartz. These are all Knox Group chert. And this one are fragments of steatite or soapstone bowls. This is the earliest evidence we have of bowls being used. This predates pottery. And this area, particularly Spartanburg County, is rich in soapstone deposits that are exposed, and the Indians used a lot of those soapstone bowls that were quarried in Spartanburg. And this soapstone goes all the way from Georgia all the way up into Maryland, I know. Whether it extends into Pennsylvania, I'm not sure offhand. And of course, this is a little drill or awl made from one of these points, resharpened. This is what the cooking looked like at these late archaic sites. These are big pits full of rock. And a lot of those are firecrack rocks, but also we find a lot of pieces of those soapstone bowls in there. They crack sometimes and burst open while cooking on the fires, and they just left them there. We never reconstructed an entire bowl. I guess we got some that's about a third of the bowl. And this is at the Eden site. And this looks what they look like after they've been excavated and the stones removed. This one is in the process of being excavated. This one not started yet. Well, that brings us to the woodland period. We're getting even more domesticates. and we're getting interaction with the Hopewell culture up in Ohio. We're finding Hopewell pottery in East Tennessee. We're finding Flint Ridge chalcedony blades from Flint Ridge in Ohio. And we're finding that they were trading for mica from North Carolina, and we're getting North Carolina pottery there. And they're also getting copper and pottery from North Georgia. And we found that the people at the Icehouse bottom site during the woodland period are apparently trade brokers. They're trading with these three areas. They're acting as the middlemen in the trade. Oh, and this is real neat, came out of a burial I excavated. That is the world's largest medicine cube. It's about 2 feet long. And it's broken. And it was broken intentionally, and it was laid side by side next to the skeleton. That's one of the neatest burials I ever excavated. We get a lot of celts. We get some of these gorgets. We get stem points, and we get triangular points. It's at this time that the bow and arrow is introduced. And up until this point, they used addles or spear throwers. So most of what people call arrowheads never saw a bow and arrow. They were spear points and knives. Only these triangular ones ever saw an arrow. This is the ground surface. This is a huge midden, early woodland midden. Very thick, black, greasy soil, and it's got a big storage pit. Goes down here. After the excavations were finished, we all stood for a group picture in that pit. We got the entire 7-person crew in that pit together. Actually, the pit next to it, the repair pits. This is the pit we were photographed in. This is a house. You see the edge of the post holes. This is a kind of feature. You have post holes around the perimeter of the house. You have central support posts, usually 4 central support posts. And so this is an early woodland house, and in the center is a hearth. That brings us to the Mississippian period. Found these shell masks, shell gorgets. We have ear pins, water bottles, all kinds of really beautiful, interesting pottery. Can anybody see Tellico Mound? Anybody see the mound? This is Tellico Mound. That's 25 feet tall. That's the Tellico site. Tellico is a Middle Mississippian Dallas phase occupation, and it was later the historic Cherokee village of Tellico. That's why it's gotten this name. Here's a close-up of the mound. Top of the mound's up here. These are full-size people, just so you realize how big the mound was. That was the largest mound at Tellico. Here it is in a schematic picture. That's Mound A. Mound B is in the corner. We have on the corner. We have a palisaded village. In the middle, you have a plaza. We know from other cultures that the people lived in these villages with these mounds. And I'm going to use an example, the historic Natchez Indians at the Fatherland site. The political leader lived on the larger mound, and he was called the Great Sun. He was supposed to be the embodiment of the sun, the supreme God. His brother was the shaman or medicine man. He lived on the lesser mound, and the Natchez fellow was named the Tattooed Serpent. Shamans always tried to have some identification with the underworld, whereas most people were afraid of it, they embraced it. Serpents were the only animal that lived on the ground surface, below the ground surface, and in the water. So serpents were always thought of as being something special. So calling himself the tattooed serpent sort of sets him apart. So we know that that's what happened here. These mounds were not burial mounds, but are frequently full of burials. The political leader dies. Another layer of soil is put on top of his house. The house is burned and he's burned in it, or they actually bury him in the floor of the house. The house is burned, another foot of mound is put on top, and they erect the house of his successor. When he dies, the same process takes place. So it takes several generations to build one of these mounds 25 feet tall. Now that's 25 feet tall when we excavated it. I'm sure it was taller when the first European settlers got here. This is a typical Mississippian house. It's recessed into the ground about 18 inches. Post holes go all the way around. You have central support posts in it. And then you have all of these small post holes. Those were benches and beds. This is where the people sat and slept. And people were always coming down while we were excavating, and they wanted the question they wanted to ask the most: where is the cemetery? Where is the cemetery? Right here. What do you mean? I want to know where the cemetery. You tell me this is where the village was. This is where the houses are. Where's the cemetery? Right here. They buried themselves right under the beds they slept in. These are burial pits. And for some reason, John Q. Public never could understand it. I'd sit there and I'd lecture these people 30 minutes about what they were looking at. And when I finished, they'd say, where's the burial ground? I'm through talking. I'll talk to the next group. Maybe they'll be smarter. This is a nice negative painted water bottle from Topla. This was recovered from the upper levels of the mound. I think it's just absolutely beautiful. And you notice that you have the southern cult symbol of the weeping eye with the negative painting there. This was not for casual usage. This was probably made for inclusion with the burial. Here is a dog effigy water bottle. Lamar, doesn't that look like that comes straight out of Mexico? No. Nope, that was made at Copeland. And it too has negative painting on it. Now, that one is broken, not intentionally, just the weight of the earth on it in the burial caused it to get broken. Now, this brings us to my favorite part of the project, the Cherokee Indians. The Cherokee, I think, very fascinating people. The Tellico project was really unique. It's not every archaeological project that comes with a map to show you where the sites are that you need to excavate. But Henry Timberlake published his memoirs, I'm holding it up right here, in 1765. He lived among the Cherokee for a season, and he wrote memoirs, and he produced this map. This is the Little Tennessee River Valley. This is the Little Tennessee River, and it goes to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Here is the town of Tallahassee, Silica, halfway town, either that's Silica, that's Chilhowie, halfway town, Silica, Chota, Tanassi. And that's the way it was pronounced, Tanassi. This is what gives the state of Tennessee its name. Now, if you're Cherokee, you call it Tanassi. Most people call it Tennessee. But if you are from Tennessee, the syllable you pronounce emphasis on is the first one, Tennessee. Nobody who is from Tennessee says Tennessee or Tanassi. But if you were Cherokee, the town of Tanassi gave name to the river and the state. And the last site, we have Tomotley, we have Tuskegee, and we have Mealoqua, or Great Island. In Cherokee, Equa means big, and Toqua is big Toko. And I don't know if my Cherokee is accurate, but right here at Mealoqua, Mealoqua means island. Equa, big, Mealoqua. Now, my favorite Cherokee name is Silica Equa, means big witch. When I was a youngster, my father was employed by the Baptist Children's Homes of North Carolina. And every Thanksgiving Sunday after Thanksgiving, was the big annual drive, special collection taken for the children's homes. And my father edited a newspaper, religious news, and it trumpeted the cause of the children's homes. There were 3 then in North Carolina. There are more now. But he would publish the results of the special offering every year, and I would sometimes help him proofread. And I found this church at Cherokee. They were a small church, and they didn't give much, but they gave some every year, and they were a bunch of poor Cherokee on the reservation. And the name of their church was Big Witch Baptist Church, because they live in the Big Witch community on the reservation, or in Cherokee, Silica Equa. Incidentally, if your wife has access to a Cherokee dictionary, never call her Silica Equa. This is the town of Silica, right there at the Great Smoky Mountains. That's the town right here on the second terrace of the river. This is Silica. You can see the excavations. This is a paired Cherokee house. You have a rounded, squarish winter house and a long, rectangular summer house. The summer house is like an open pavilion, but they had woven mats they could hang on the wall. So if there's a chilly morning, or if it's rainy, you can put the mats up to keep it dry inside. The rain won't blow in. It stays warmer. But the winter house is made of wattle and daub. That is clay. It's very weatherproof. Both of them have thatched roofs, but the winter house can be quite warm. In fact, it's way too warm to use in the summertime. That's why they have the pavilion for their summer house. Here is another one. This has been excavated. Now, I know, because I know what the results are, this area, one wall of the summer house went right here. The other wall of the summer house went right here. They had to move that back dirt and excavate that area and find all of the summer house there. This is at Chota. Chota was the overkill and overall Cherokee capital. And this is what the houses look like. You have your winter house. Now I think the artist made it a little too round, but that's the winter house and that's the summer house with the woven panels up. This is the townhouse at Chota. Here is your central fireplace in the middle. That is your hearth. You have 8 central support posts. This is a wall and a wall and straight lines. It is octagonal or 8-sided. The historic visitors to the Cherokee in the 18th century said that the townhouses were 6, 7, and 8-sided. If you go up to Cherokee Reservation right now, and go to the Oconaluftee Indian Village. Anybody been to the Oconaluftee Indian Village? If you go there, they will tell you that the townhouses had 7 sides. One side for each of the 7 Cherokee clans. Not true. That spill and the village recreation was done in the early 1950s before any Cherokee townhouses had been excavated. Every single Cherokee townhouse that's been excavated has had 8 sides. The later ones had 8 equal sides. The early ones had 4 long sides and 4 short sides. This is Tokwa, and this is the early townhouse with 4 central support posts. The later townhouse, which was erected around 1760 or so, that has 8 equal sides to it. Now this was done by the artist, and it's circular, but it proves my point. See the straight line inside the circle? Straight lines. And just like a house, there is a summer townhouse. All of these post holes held bleachers. In fact, you can see these lines. Those are the lines for the supports for the bleachers. This townhouse could seat 500 people at a time. We're not talking about a small rinky-dink structure. This is a later Cherokee townhouse. This one is from Tokwa. It has 4 long sides and 4 short sides, but it still has 8 sides. All of the Cherokee townhouses that have been excavated, and we excavated 6 at Tellico. U.S. Forest Service has excavated 2 at Chattooga Town in Oconee County, and in North Carolina, I think they've excavated 2. I know they've excavated 1. No, co-excavated 1. I think there's been 1 since. Each one of them has 8 sides. This is what the inside of the townhouse would look like. It's cut away so you can see the bleachers on the far side, and you can see the supports for the bleachers in the foreground. These were also covered with earth and are frequently referred to by early travelers as mounts or mounds. And this is what Chota looked like. Here's the townhouse, here's the summer townhouse, here's the plaza where they played stickball, and here are the paired winter and summer houses. And you notice some of them are spread out. Cherokee towns that were on the overhill that we excavated, the number of houses shown on Timberlake's map runs from about 10 houses to about 60 houses. The bigger towns were Chota and Silica. Those were the big towns. These are some of the Cherokee features. This is a globular pit. Globular because it's rounded like a globe. It's shaped like a globe. A shallow basin is very flat and not very deep. This is deeper, and it's full of corn cobs. These are pieces of corn cobs and pottery in there. This is what it looked like when it was gotten a little deeper. A lot of the visitors describe these pits and their usage at the time. They interpret them as, they call them smudge pits, and said that they burned a lot of green corn in them because it gave off a thick smoke and kept the mosquitoes away. So it had a double purpose. It could, actually a triple purpose. It gives you a way to get rid of the corn. You burn it, keeps mosquitoes away, and you could put a pot on it and cook with it until your pot breaks. And when this pot was put back together, it looked like that. Typical overhill Cherokee style pottery vessel. Got a lot of overhill check stamp pottery there. This is very typical for the Cherokee pottery. This is what's called a two-post pit. You got a post here and you got a post over here. And this was used for storage of some sort of food. And the two posts held an elevated pin above it in which you could put corn and keep rodents out of. So they probably put some sort of tuber down below, you know, like a lot of people have a sweet potato cellar, sort of like that. And then you put the corn above it where the mice can't get it. And at some point, this ceased to function in its traditional way. And when the family dog died, they just covered up this pit and buried the dog. That's the only dog I ever excavated. I found it quite fascinating. It was in a good state of preservation. Now, can anybody tell me what the implement on the top is? Lamar, I'll put you on the spot.
Looks like a hoe.
It is a hoe. What are the implements on the bottom?
Probably a gills type hoe.
No, they're hoes too. Right here is a plaster cast of the hoe on the right. I'm going to pass these around. Starting here. And I'm going to show you a broken one. This broken hoe came from Silica. So you have a plaster cast of an actual one, and then you have an actual one that's broken. So the one on the right that the plaster cast is made from, that was found at Chota. All of these were found at Chota. This picture is to give you an idea about trade. These are traditional Cherokee hoes on the bottom, but they were replaced very quickly during the middle 18th century because these iron hoes were much more efficient. They didn't break. Those greenstone slate hoes, actually it's an argillite, if you know your rocks, they break quite easily. And the iron hoe was much superior. Just like this iron knife replaced the three knives at the top. But what we found with the Cherokee is these end scrapers, and these are bifacial end scrapers. They're not unifacial end scrapers like you get during the Archaic period. These are bifacial, but they continued to be used during the Historic period because the Cherokee never found any hide scrapers that they thought worked as well. So they continued to produce those. These are typical Cherokee arrowheads. You've got these nice isosceles triangular ones here, made out of local Knox root chert. And these are made of copper, sheet copper. They would buy sheet copper kettles from the traders and heavy-duty scissors, and they would cut those kettles up because they wanted the sheet copper. The measurement of all of the copper arrowheads we got varied from the measurements of these chert arrowheads by less than 1 millimeter. So very obviously, this is the design these guys were copying. And later on, as they continued to make arrowheads, they made these down here, which are not nearly as well flaked. They have very few flake scars on them. They're very poorly made. So here you have early Cherokee and later Cherokee. and you see a shift to these copper ones. And these are holes in the middle. They would put a pin through them to attach them to the shaft of the arrow. These are the flint-knapping pressure flakers that they use to make the stone arrowheads. These are just deer antler tines, but those show usage as being used for making tools. Here you have some Dallas phase points. These are gunflints. This is a lead rifle ball, and this is a flintlock to a flintlock rifle. These gunflints were made in Europe and traded to the Cherokee. These gunflints were made by the Cherokee from the locally available Knox Group church. To me, I think that's extremely neat. That's what turns me on.
Well,
Taking their own ingenuity and making those.
the light bulb is out of France, right?
Yeah, that's called, the honey color called French flakes. And these are called Dutch, even though that stuff turns up in England, France, Belgium, and Holland. I don't have one of the good English black ones there. Now, this is the Tellico site. You can see the excavations are in progress. One of my best contributions to the project was my wife had a co-worker at the University of Tennessee Library, and he was a private pilot. He had a pilot's license, belonged to a flying club, which gave him access to assessment. He was working on his master's in geology, so he was always interested in what I was doing. And he kept telling me, let me take you up in the plane. I'll show you the project you've been working on. You can take some color slides. And I said, okay. So I went to Dr. Chapman, who was my boss, and I said, I need some film. And he said, what for? And I told him what I was going to use it for. And he was sort of reluctant. Oh, all right, you have to develop it yourself. I took the film and I went flying. And you know what? Every photograph I took ended up in slideshows at the Southeastern Archaeological Conference, the Society for American Archaeology, other conferences all over the world, as professors took my slides, because I was the only one who went up in an airplane and took aerial photographs. And right upstream from Tellico, this is upstream, this is Callaway Island. I spent one summer working right there. Here is a fish weir, a fish trap. That V-shaped pattern, the water rapids, white water over it. They would go upstream and pound the water, drive the fish down, and in the apex of that V there's a gap. And they would put baskets in there that the fish could swim in and not swim out of. And they would switch those baskets constantly because they would get enough fish up that they could have a feast for the entire town. This is Cherokee town of Mealoka. This is Mealoka, or Great Island, Big Island. And it's now, it was later called Rose Island. We had some famous excavations there. This is Tamaki. This is the Cherokee town of Tamaki. The old road ran right up through here. That picture of me with the shovel, that was taken right there. Now, this is DeBrom's map. He designed Fort Loudon. And that is Fort Loudon right there. And it doesn't show right here because there was no Cherokee town there. But that is where the town of Tuskegee grew. It grew because Fort Loudon was there. And the Indians wanted to live handy because the traders stayed there. And the soldiers were always buying stuff, so there was trade. And the soldiers who lived there lot of them had wives in Charleston, but they took Cherokee wives while they were there. So that is Fort Loudon. Tuskegee came right there, and that is Tomotley. And you can see a townhouse at Tomotley. Tomotley is an interesting town. Throughout the 18th century, the Cherokee to the east were getting pounded. And history has been unkind to the Cherokee. They've been portrayed as a bunch of bloodthirsty savages. That's just a wrong-headed way of looking at it. What we had was a clash of two legal systems. The English legal system is built on individual responsibility. If you commit a crime, you are held responsible. Your brother is not responsible for your crime. Only you are responsible. With the Cherokee, they had what's called clan revenge. Cherokee had 7 clans. Matrilineal clan. You belong to your mother's clan. Clans could not intermarry. If you're of one clan and you're sweet on a boy in another clan, that's incest. You might not, it's okay if he's in another clan. If he's in your clan, that's incest. He might not be genetically related to you, but he's of your clan, and it's just like he's your brother. So you have to marry outside your clan. So you belong to your mother's clan and her mother's clan. Your father, when it comes time for celebrations, he goes to his mother's clan because he was of a different clan. So, with the corporate responsibility, if I murdered somebody from another clan, any member of my clan can be held responsible. If I go running off and hide, they can't find me. They will kill a member of my clan in retaliation, and the score is even. So that is the thing that was hard for the English to understand, and it was just as equally difficult for the Cherokee to understand. Since the English didn't have any clans, they treated the English as if they all belonged to one clan. So if an Englishman killed a Cherokee, they would kill any Englishman, male or female. Well, the English thought that that was terribly bloodthirsty. They didn't understand the corporate responsibility. That all members of your clan are responsible. So that was really the conflict that was going on. Well, that stealing the Cherokee's land. This is Fort Loudon. This was built in 1756, and the soldiers there were from South Carolina. This is the only original structure standing, and you can see fireplaces right here. You can see some fireplaces here. There are barracks here. Those palisades were erected in 1939 as a result of some WPA archaeology. Half of Fort Loudon would have been flooded by the dam, so they raised the lower part up 20 feet. And they rebuilt the palisade. This is a Tennessee State Park. You can go there and visit today. These are the excavations in the town of Tuskegee. The most famous person born there was Sequoyah, who invented the Cherokee syllabary. It's not an alphabet. Each letter represents a syllable, not a series of letters that are put together to create syllables. So, like my name is Roberts, that's 2 syllables. But it takes a whole string of letters to put together. In the Cherokee, they would have 1 letter for each syllable. This is getting back to the map. This was a great thing to have. During the French and Indian War, the Cherokee, who had always been loyal to the King of England. The first Cherokee delegation went to London in 1730 and had an audience with the king. And in the French and Indian War, they temporarily sided with the French. After all of the lower towns in South Carolina and on the other side of the Chattooga River got burned, those people moved, and places they moved, a lot of them moved to Motley. Then Griffith Rutherford, North Carolina militia, they burned the middle towns. And then William Byrd led an expedition to burn the Overhill town. Well, by this time, the Cherokee saw that they did not have the manpower to stop these people. So, they met them up near Bristol in Kingsport, Tennessee, the Long Island on the Holston. This was a traditional sacred island to the Cherokee. When the Virginians first encountered them, they were living just above Bristol in Virginia. And so the Overhill Cherokee met the Virginians there and said, essentially, we give up, we're sorry, we want to be loyal to the king again. Please don't burn our towns. And to show you that we're sincere, we want to invite some of your officers to come and live with us. They can live as our guests this winter, and we will show you that we are true subjects of the king. So they asked for volunteers. Lieutenant Henry Timberlake volunteered. Also a sergeant named Thomas Sumter from, I believe it's Augusta County, Virginia. You know who Thomas Sumter is? When he moved to South Carolina, he became known as the Gamecock. He volunteered, and they had a Cherokee interpreter, a trader, who spoke Cherokee. 3 men went to live with the Cherokee. This is how Timberlake came to live with the Overhill and how he came to draw this map. Here are some Cherokee pipes. This is a Cherokee pipe. This is a Cherokee pipe. Both came from Chota. This pipe came from Chota too, but it was made in England. That's a kaolin pipe, made of white kaolin clay. This is made from a material that outcrops on the Cherokee Reservation near Birdtown, and no white people know where it is. It's one of the most closely guarded secrets I know of. I've asked repeatedly among Cherokee friends, could I just see it? Nope, cannot see it. I don't know of any white person that's been there. My wife had a library conference in Alexandria, so I went over and visited at Smithsonian and got to take pictures of these Cherokee pipes that were collected in the 1800s from the Cherokee. These have bears on them. This is a man, I think that's a snake, and that's an owl. But these are Cherokee pipes that were collected from Cherokees that were smoking them in the 1800s. These are Cherokee baskets from Turtletown in Tennessee. The Kinsey family were given these by their next door neighbors who were Cherokee, who were still living in East Tennessee in the 20th century, but eventually gave up their land because they could not prove it was theirs and moved to the reservation in North Carolina. So there were Cherokee into the 20th century still living in East Tennessee, but just in remote mountain areas. So I'll close with this one. While we were excavating in the spring of '77, there was a court decision, and we were coming and going from down close to the dam, so we would actually drive across the dam and out the gate there where all the TVA workers did. And we got stopped by the security system. A couple of security guards demanded to know why we hippies from UT had put this sign up. And we looked at it, we didn't know anything about it. It wasn't any of our people, we took pictures of it. But I explained to him, no, don't you understand? This is one of your guys put this up. He's saying that the Tellico Dam is a victim. Well, we wouldn't say it's a victim. You guys would say it's a victim. So somebody on your side put that up. It wasn't us. So I brought along with me tonight a copy of Timberlake's book, and I have a larger map that you can see more clearly. Turn the lights back on if you would. And I also brought, since this is the Revolutionary War Museum, I brought a sword along. This is a sword I just acquired 2 weeks ago. This is a German-made English sword. This was made between 1720 and 1750. And all English soldiers carried these into the French and Indian War. Then they tried some bayonets, and the soldiers liked the bayonets so well that they said, we don't want to carry those heavy swords anymore. So according to the warrant of 1768, only sergeants would carry these swords. They were used throughout the American Revolution. This one is stamped 7-1. I don't know for sure what that means. I hope it means the 71st Regiment of Foot or Fraser's Highlanders, because Fraser's Highlanders were all over South Carolina. They were in Charleston. They were at siege of Charleston, siege of Savannah. They were at Utah Springs. They were at up at Guilford Courthouse. They were at Yorktown. And 2 companies of them were among the last troops to leave Charleston. They never left Charleston. They stayed there the whole time. I don't know that it's the 71st, but I'm hopeful it is. I'm going to try to do more research on that. But it's definitely the kind of sword that was carried by British sergeants in the Revolutionary War. So if you want to come up, take a look at that and take a closer look at the map of the Overhill towns, please come up and do so. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Are they still excavating?
No. That reservoir was filled in 1983, 82. It's all underwater. All those sites I showed you are under about 20 feet of water. Some of them 50 feet.